Welcome in. Take a moment and just arrive. Wherever you are right now, however you're lying, let this be the place you stop. You don't have to do anything else tonight. There's nowhere else to be. Whatever you've been carrying today, the weight of it, the noise of it, you can set it down now. None of it needs to follow you into the dark. And whatever you didn't finish today, it will still be there in the morning. You don't need to hold it any longer. So let's begin to slow everything down. Together, let your mouth close soft and breathe in through your nose gently and let it go slow like a sigh. There's no rhythm to chase. Just let the breath out take a little longer than the breath in. Breathe in and let it fall away. And again, in and out, slower still. Now, one deeper one. Take in a breath and then just a little more on top. And now let it all go. Good. Let the next breath find its own way now. It knows what to do. And as the breathing settles, let your body begin to follow. Let your jaw unclench. Let your teeth come apart just slightly. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let them be heavy. Let your hands open or just rest however they fall. Let your belly soften with every breath out, nothing held in. Let your legs grow heavy, heavier than they've been all day. And your feet, let them be still and warm. And right here, in the center of your chest, let there be a little warmth, a loosening, as though something you'd been bracing against is finally letting go. You're not waiting for anything now. You're just here, in the low light, at the edge of sleep. Tonight we have a story from Nora, a story she has held for a very long time. There are things that happen in a life, things witnessed, things survived, things that never quite let go, that can't be spoken of easily. Not with the people who knew the people involved. But some stories need a witness. Some things need to be said before it's too late to say them. And it's easier sometimes to give a story to a stranger in the dark than to anyone she has ever known or loved. Because you won't look at her differently in the morning. Because the dark makes certain truths easier to speak out loud. This is one of those stories. It's filled with things that don't fully explain themselves, with questions that were never answered, and silences that were never broken. Some of it will stay with you. That is the nature of these things. But tonight, it finally gets told. This is The Swallow. Before we sleep.
There is a kind of light that only comes in early morning, in a kitchen with the window over the sink, and it makes the air visible. You have seen it, the dust hanging there in the slant of it, turning, going nowhere in particular. When I was small, that light meant my grandmother. I would come down before I was properly awake and sit at her table with my legs not reaching the floor, and she would be at the stove with her back to me. Bacon, the gas ring ticking, the percolator starting to knock, and the sun would come in low over the sink and fill the whole room with hanging dust. I used to think it was the smell I could see, that the warmth of the bacon and the coffee and my grandmother had gotten so thick in the air it had turned to gold and started to drift. I felt held by it. I have never in my life felt as safe as I felt at that table, in that light, with the dust going slowly nowhere, and my grandmother's back to me, cooking. I am telling you that first. I need you to have it before the rest, the way I had it before the rest, so you understand what was taken. We were at Marin's table. June. Late afternoon, not morning, the light coming from the west and lying long across the wood between us, and the dust was hanging in it the way it does, except it was not going nowhere, it was moving. Slowly, in a long current, the whole drift of it crossing the beam and going on into the shadow of the room, as though somewhere, far off, something had taken a breath, and the breath had reached all the way up to her kitchen. I told myself it was the window, a draft in the screen. I am telling you what I told myself. I have known Marin since we were 7. 2 houses on the same gravel road, and a culvert between them we were not allowed to play in, and played in anyway. I would know if she were lying to me. I want that on the table before anything else, because of where this goes. She was not lying to me. And under the smell of the afternoon, cut grass, the coffee gone cold between us, there was a second smell, a cold one, wet stone and iron, and a handful of coins held too long in a fist, and the bottom of a well. If you have ever leaned out over one and breathed in, it was coming off her hands. She kept lifting them toward her face while she talked, not to cover her mouth, just to keep them near, the way you hold on to something cold you can't put down. There was a summer, we must have been 13, when a song got into both of us at the same time, the way a song can when you are 13, so that it stopped being a song and became a kind of weather we lived inside. We wore the tape down to its ghost. We sang it with the windows down on the road between our 2 houses, badly, both of us, the whole way. I copied the words into the back of the journal I kept that year, because even then I could not let a thing be only remembered. I had to set it down where it would hold. That journal was a happy book. I want to say that while I still can. There was a long stretch of my life when the notebook only kept good things, and I trusted it the way you trust a thing that has never once hurt you. I'll come back to this song. I am sorry to keep telling you I'll come back to things. It is the only honest way I know to tell this, the way it actually sits in me, which is all at once, everything reaching for everything else. I should tell you why I keep the notebook, because it matters to all of the rest. I keep it because a thing written down is finished. It is out of view and onto the page, and the page does not change its mind. Memory is weather. It moves through you. It rains and clears, and you cannot keep a single hour of it the way the hour actually was. But the page holds. What I write at my table at night is true in a way nothing in my head is true, because it is fixed. I can go back and find it exactly where I left it, in my own hand, unargued with. For most of my life, that was the whole comfort of the thing. Whatever else came loose, the notebook held still. The notebook was the one room in the house where the air did not move. And then, what do you do? I am asking you because I do not know. What do you do when you go back to the page and it does not say what you remember writing? When the hand is yours and the ink is yours and the words are not the words you carried out of the night in your chest, one of them is wrong, the page or the memory. And the page cannot be wrong. That was the entire point of the page. The page was built so that it could not be wrong. So it is me. There is no third door. That is what I have been living inside of, if you want the truth of it. Not a ghost, a disagreement. A small, patient disagreement between what I wrote and what I hold. And it was not always there, and I can tell you nearly to the night when it started. Here is the first one, and it is small, and I almost don't tell it because it makes me sound careless. In the notebook, in my own hand, I wrote that Marin's kitchen smelled of coffee. Only coffee. I read that line back about a week later, and the cold smell, the first thing I noticed before she said a word, was nowhere on the page. My hand had reached past it and written coffee, and stopped. I have thought about that more than is good for me. I think my hand reached for the oldest smell it knew. I think, sitting in that wrong light, some part of me wanted the morning kitchen and my grandmother's back so badly that it wrote the safe smell down instead of the true one. That is a kind thing to believe about it. I would like to keep believing it. But it is not only the kitchen entry. That is the part I have not said to anyone. Since that night, when I go back through the book, old entries that have nothing to do with Marin or with any of this, I keep finding small places where the page and I no longer agree. A color, the order of a day, a thing someone said to me that I would have sworn went otherwise. Nothing that matters. Everything that matters. I did not used to find them. I am finding them now. We will come back to it. I have to tell you the rest first, or none of it will land where it lands in me. Marin had a sister, 4 years up, Della. If you grew up the way we did, you knew Adela, the one who climbed the water tower on a dare and then climbed it again, slower, for herself. The one who could find the edge of any rule and stand on it, grinning, daring you to call it crossing. I loved her the way you love the brave friend of a friend, from a polite distance with my heart in my mouth. Marin loved her the way you love the person who taught you to be a little less afraid than is wise. There is no fixing that kind of love after. I want you to understand that going in. Their people had land south of town. Not a farm anymore, a long fold of hill country gone back to cedar and limestone, ground that is more rock than dirt, where the water does what it likes. And on that land there was a creek. In a wet year it ran the length of the property and out the far fence to wherever creeks go. In a dry year it ran shorter and shorter, and then one afternoon you would walk down to where it had always kept running and find that it had simply stopped, gone into the ground. There was a seam at the base of the hill, a dark mouth no wider than a man lying down, and the creek poured into it and was gone. The family called it where the creek goes under. That was the whole name. People who live beside a thing like that do not give it a frightening name. They give it the plainest name they can, and they keep their children back from it without ever quite saying why. A swallet is the proper word. I learned that later, looking the way I look at the things I should leave alone. A place where the surface water is taken down into the dark and is not given back the same way. And it made a sound. Not always. In dry weather. Now and then, when the creek was low and the mouth stood open. A long, low, drawn sound would come up out of the seam. Slow, like a breath pulled in through a narrow gap and held. Marin's grandfather, who had farmed that ground, called it the draw. He said it the way you'd say the weather. He said you didn't go down when the hill was drawing. He never said why, and nobody asked. The way you don't ask about the plain names for things. The summer it happened was a dry one. The creek had been going under since May, which it almost never did so early. and the mouth stood open and dry-lipped, and you could, if you were the kind of person who would, get down on your belly and go in after the water. Della was the kind of person who would. She had been in twice before, a little way, with a borrowed lamp and more nerve than sense, and come back up, grinning and filthy and full of it. "It opens up down there," she kept saying. "It's bigger than you'd think. You have to see how big it gets." I have that line in the notebook too. "It's bigger than you'd think." In quotation marks, in my own writing, set down as Della's, a woman I met maybe 4 times in my life, who has been gone now 15 years. I do not know how I came to have her voice. Marin must have done her, the way you do a person you've lost, getting the cadence right without meaning to. And I must have written down the voice. That is surely what happened. They went down on a Sunday, in the long light of the afternoon, with the draw quiet and the creek a thin, cold thread running into the dark ahead of them. The first part, Marin said, was almost nothing. You went in on your hands and knees along the wet of the stream bed, the daylight behind you going from gold to gray to a small white coin at your back, and then to nothing. And the cold came up through your palms from the rock. Ordinary cave cold. The good kind. The kind that feels like the inside of a refrigerator and not like anything else. Except that after a while, Marin said, there was something under the cold. Faint. A sweetness that did not belong. The smell a shut room gets, or flowers 3 days past. And there was nothing down there to turn. No flower, no creature, nothing that had ever been alive to go sweet. She told herself it was her own mind. You tell yourself a great many things going into a hill. Then the ceiling came down to meet the floor, and they reached the squeeze. I am going to tell this part the way she told it, which was plainly, with very few words, and I have learned not to add any. You lie down. You turn your head to the side because there is not room for it straight. You let the air out of your chest, all of it, because the rock will not give you the inch your chest takes when it is full. And you move with your fingers and the points of your boots, an inch at a time, with the whole weight of the hill a hand's width above your spine. Della went first. Marin listened to her sister's boots, and then to her sister's breathing, and then to the small sounds of her sister's clothing on the stone, and she went after the sounds. The rock held her ribs. She said it pressed on her ribs like a hand that was not in a hurry. She got through. They both got through. On the far side it opened, the way Della had promised, into a black so large the lamp could not find a far wall, and they stood up for the first time in 100 feet of crawling, and breathed. And the stillness was wrong. I want to be careful here, because this is the part I have read in the notebook more times than I have let myself remember it, and I am no longer sure which is which. A cave is still. That is the thing about a cave, Marin said. The air does not move. There is no weather down there. The stillness is so complete it sits on your ears like water. She had felt it on the way in, and it had not frightened her. It was supposed to be still. So when Della held the lamp up to throw the beam out across the chamber, and the small flame of it stood straight up off the wick without a single lean, no draft, no breath of air anywhere in that room, the flame as still as a flame in a painting, Marin understood that the air was not moving, and the dust was moving. In the beam, fine as flour, fine as the inside of a shut room, the dust hung and turned and went, slowly, steadily, in one long current across the light and out into the dark where the lamp could not follow, going somewhere. The flame stood perfectly still, and the dust rode a tide with no wind behind it, and both of those things were true at the same time, in the same air, a foot apart. And then, far off, from somewhere below the floor they were standing on, slow and long and drawn, on account that was not a person's and was not the weather's, the hill took a breath. The draw. Down there, underneath them. Marin said that was when she knew the cave was not empty. She did not say of what. I did not ask. Here is the second one. The seam I cannot do anything kind with. In the notebook, in my hand, on the night she told me, I wrote down the count of the draw. How long the breath in, how long it held, how long the breath out. 3 numbers, exact, the way you would write down a recipe. And Marin never gave me those numbers. I have gone back over that evening 100 times, and she never counted it for me. Never could have. She said long, she said slow, she said it wasn't a person's, and that was all she had words for. The numbers are not hers. They are in my hand. I do not remember writing them. I do not know where a person gets the count of a breath she has never heard, in a room she has never stood in, 100 feet under a hill she has never been to. I have to stop the story for a moment because I keep promising you we'll come back, and this is one of the places. My refrigerator has a habit. Late, when the house has gone quiet, the compressor under it cycles on, and there is a half second before the hum settles where it pulls. A low intake, air drawn through the coils, there and gone. The first time I heard it after that night, I was on my feet before I knew I had stood up. Not afraid exactly. My body had simply decided something without me. The way your hand comes off a hot pan before the heat reaches you as a thought. My stomach had dropped, the way it drops on a stair that isn't there, and I stood in my own kitchen with my heart going and listened to my own refrigerator finish its ordinary hum. And I understood that for half a second I had heard the draw. I went and got the notebook. I needed to check a thing Marin had said. I told myself I needed to check it. I read the page held. That time, the page held, and I went back to bed, and I was fine. I am telling you about the refrigerator so you'll know it is small. That is how it comes. It is always something small. Back in the dark, the two of them stood in that breathing room longer than they should have, because Della wanted to find where it came from. Marin said the longer they stood, the worse the stillness got. Not louder, the opposite, a stillness that thickened, that began to feel less like the absence of sound and more like the held quiet of a room with someone else in it. And the dust. She said after a while, the dust stopped moving in one even current and began, very slowly, to move around them, to bend its drift the way water bends around 2 stones set in a stream, as if the breath that carried it had found the 2 warm shapes standing in the cold and was going around them and noting them and going on. She said Della went quiet. Della, who never went quiet, who narrated her whole life out loud. Della stopped talking and stood with the lamp held up and looked into the dark where the dust was going and did not say anything at all. And that, Marin told me, was the most frightened she had ever been in her life. Not the smell, not the breath. Her sister, gone quiet, looking at something. Then Della said she was going to go a little farther. just to the next turn, just to see where the air went. There was a lower passage, a slot down and to the left, where the draw seemed to come from. And she said she'd only be a minute, and she handed Marin the second lamp. And she went down into the slot with the first one. Marin watched the light go. Around the corner of the rock, and then only the glow of it on the wall, and then only a paleness, and then the dark closed up soft behind it, like water closing over a dropped stone. She waited. She doesn't know how long. The draw came and went, on its count that was not a count. She called Della's name once, and the room took the sound and gave nothing back, not even an echo, which is its own kind of wrong, because a room that big should hand your voice back to you, and that one did not. It kept it. When she finally went to the slot to follow, and she made me understand this was not a long time, this was minutes, this was a sister waiting on a sister. The slot was not the size it had been. I am not going to tell you what happened to Della. I want to be plain about that, because you have been patient and you have earned an ending, and I do not have the one you want. Marin did not tell me what happened to Della, because Marin does not know what happened to Della. She knows the slot was not the size it had been. She knows she could not get through it, though her sister had. She knows the lamp Della carried did not come back, and neither did the sound of her, and neither did she. That is the whole of what is known. I have set it down exactly. I check it more than I check anything else in the book, because it is the one place I most need the page to hold. And so far, I will tell you the truth, so far the page on that has held. There is one thing more, and Marin gave it to me low, almost not out loud. After. When she was alone in that room, and the slot would not let her through, and her sister's light did not come back, the draw changed. Not stopped, changed. The long, slow breath that had been going in and out of the hill on its count that was not a count went, she said, easy. The way a thing breathes when it has been waiting a long while for something, and the something has finally come. She said, and this is the part she cannot carry, that it sounded satisfied, and then it set her down. She does not talk about the way up, and the little she said does not fit together, and I have stopped trying to make it fit. She said it was easy. That is the part that troubles her more than the hard parts would have. The crawl back, the squeeze that had held her ribs like a slow hand. Easy. She does not remember letting the air out of her chest for it. She does not remember the squeeze at all, going out. She remembers lying down to it. And she remembers standing up in the stream bed near the mouth. And between those two things there is a clean, white nothing, as though that stretch had been lifted out of her and the edges smoothed. She said it did not feel like climbing out. She said, and I believe this one is hers because it is too strange to be mine. She said it felt like being set down, like a cat carries a kitten, like something had her by the back of the neck and was not in a hurry, and put her down gently in the light and let go. And here is what that has done to her, which is worse, I think, than if it had simply kept them both. She has spent 15 years on a question with no floor. Why her? Why was she the one set down gently in the light and let go? She has come at it from every side, and every side gives way under her. If it took Della because Della went first, then the order was an accident, and Marin's whole life after is an accident, and she cannot stand inside that. If it took Della because Della was the one it wanted, the bright one, the brave one, the one who narrated her whole life out loud, then Marin was left behind because she was not enough to be wanted, and she cannot stand inside that either. And there is a third thing she said to me only once and asked me not to write down. And I wrote it down anyway, because I cannot seem to stop writing things down. And I will not read it to you. I will only tell you that it is the worst of the three. That it is about whether a thing that is given is the same as a thing that is taken. And whether either of them knew, going down into that hill on an ordinary Sunday, that one of them was the giving. The second time I stopped, it did not go the way the refrigerator went. It was a winter night, and a truck came down the highway behind my house and dropped a gear on the grade. That long, low pull an engine makes when it leans into a hill. And for less than a second, the note of it bent, and there it was. The draw. Not like it. The exact shape of the breath Marin had described and I had never heard. The cold went up the backs of my arms and into my scalp, every hair, all at once. The truck went on down the grade and the night closed up behind it. I went to the notebook. There is a photograph in it, the only one I have from that day. A snapshot Marin gave me, the two sisters at the mouth of the Swallet before they went down. Della grinning with the borrowed lamp in her hand, and Marin squinting behind her. I had written a description of it on the facing page, the way I do, so the words and the picture would hold each other in place. The description does not match the photograph anymore. I had written that Della held the lamp in her right hand. In the photograph, she is holding it in her left. I had written the sky behind them was clear. In the photograph, there is a bank of cloud coming over the ridge. Small things, a handedness, a weather, the kind of thing you would swear you could not get wrong about a picture you had described while looking straight at it. The page did not hold, or I did not. There is no third door. I have told you that. A diary is a place you put things down so you can stop carrying them. Mine has begun handing them back. And it is handing them back changed. And I cannot tell whether the change is in the ink or in the reading of the ink, which is to say, in me. You want to know what it did to the family. I will tell you the part I can stand to tell, which is the part about the water. The creek still goes under that hill. The land is still theirs, though no one farms it, and no one goes down to the seam. But the water that comes back, and some of it does come back, lower down, in a spring at the foot of the next hill over, the water that comes back is warm. Not always. On the coldest days. You can go to that spring on a morning when the stock tanks have skinned over with ice and put your hand in the water where it comes out of the rock, and it will be warm, blood warm, as though something down there, in all that cold and dark and stillness, is keeping warm, and the water passed close enough to it to carry a little of the warmth back up into the light. Marin cannot stop going to put her hand in it. She knows how it sounds. She told me how it sounds before I could think it. She drives out. It is 2 hours now from where she lives, on the cold mornings, and she crouches at that spring. And she puts her hand into the warm water coming out of the hill, and she holds it there, and then she drives home. She has done it for 15 years. I used to think she was checking whether it was still warm. I think now she is checking the other thing. I think she is afraid of the morning she goes, and the water has gone cold. Because warm means something down there is still being kept. And she has decided, in a place she will not say out loud, that the warmth is the last of her sister. And that as long as it lasts, she has not entirely let her go down alone. She lifted her hands toward her face again when she told me that, and the cold came off them, and I wrote down, "Coffee, and we have been here before." The voice warmer here, almost catching. The third time was not the draw at all. I was in a grocery store, the kind with the music up in the ceiling, and 4 bars of it came down over the aisle. The song, our song, the one from the summer we were 13. And it did not drop my stomach or cold my arms. It went straight to my throat. I stood with my hand on a cart and my eyes stinging in the cereal aisle. For a girl who is not dead, who lives 2 hours away and drives out to a spring on cold mornings, and for the 2 of us with the windows down, singing it badly, before any of this. I went home and I found the line in the back of the old journal. The happy book. It is not the line I sang in the store. I know how I sang it. I have sung it my whole life. The journal, my own hand that good year, has it different. 1 word, a small word, the kind you would never misremember, in a song you have carried since you were 13. And I stood in my kitchen holding the 1 book I have ever trusted more than my own head. And I could not tell you, I cannot tell you now, which of them is right. The girl who wrote it down, or the woman who has sung it her whole life. It is only a song. It is only 1 word in a song. Except that it was the last clean thing I had, the one entry that had nothing to do with any of this. And now it has the cave's fingerprints on it too. That is what I have not been able to say to anyone. It is not staying in the cave. It is working backward through the book, through the years, toward the front, toward the happy parts. 1 small word at a time. The dread now her own. Now I will keep my promise, and then I will let you sleep. We were at her table, in the long west light, and the dust was hanging in it and moving, and I had been watching it move the whole time she talked without letting myself know that I was watching it. The current of it, crossing the beam, bending, I want to say it bent around us, around the 2 of us at the table, the way it had bent around the 2 of them in the dark. But I was tired, and the story was in me, and I will not swear to it. The cold smell was in the room. I had been telling myself all afternoon that it was on Marin's hands, that she had been out to the spring that morning, 2 hours each way, and brought the cold of the hill back on her skin, and that was all it was. That was all it ever was. But I had not been to any spring, and when I got up to go home, I caught the smell move with me. Across the kitchen, to the door, out to my car. It was not coming off her hands, or it was not only coming off her hands. I have had it since, faint, on the cold days, and I have stopped being able to tell you whose it is. I lift my hands toward my face. I have started to do that. I did not used to. And I have begun to understand Marin's question from the inside, which I would have told you a year ago was not possible. Because nothing took me. I was only told a story at a kitchen table by a friend I have loved since we were 7. But the question is not really why was I spared. When you have lived in it a while, it turns cold and simple and becomes a different question, which is, spared for what? There is 1 more, and then I am done. And you should know before I tell it that I did not check the notebook after this one. I want you to notice that. Every other time, I went to the page. This time I did not. And I am not sure if it is because I have stopped trusting the page, or because I have stopped needing it to tell me what I already know. It was an evening like the one at Marin's table, My own kitchen, my own west window, the light going long and gold, and the dust coming up into it. And the house made its small night sounds, the furnace and the wood and the refrigerator pulling its half-second breath. And under all of them, or inside all of them, or only in the blood moving in my own ears, there was the long, low, drawn note. Slow, on a count that is not a person's, coming up from somewhere below the floor I was standing on. A sliver of it, never the whole thing. It is never the whole thing. Just enough that my body knew it before I did. Just enough to lift the hair on my arms and drop my stomach down a stair that wasn't there. And then it was the furnace again, only ever the furnace, 200 miles. And 15 years from a hill I have never stood on. I keep the windows open now. I think it is so the air will move. I think it is so I will know, if it ever stops. The dust turned in the light. It went, slowly, in its long current toward the open window, or away from it. I could not tell, and I did not get up to see. And I am not going to tell you which, because I do not know. And the not knowing is the truest thing I have, and I am giving it to you whole. I'll keep working to remember the details, and I'll share what comes back up. Hoping, the way you hope at a thing like this, for the best. Thank you for listening.